The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the sodium lamps like veins pulsing with unspoken regrets. Finn Harlan gripped the steering wheel of his beat-up Subaru, knuckles white, as his mother's voice crackled through the phone speaker, sharp as a winter gale. "Finn, you think throwing me a party will fix everything? You're still that little boy playing dress-up in your daddy's ties, dreaming of princes instead of pulling your weight around here." He swallowed the lump in his throat, tasting the salt of rain that had dripped from his hair onto his lips, and forced a laugh that echoed hollow in the empty car. In that moment, as the wipers slashed back and forth like accusations, Finn wondered if love was just another word for endurance. But endurance had brought him this far, through the taunts in high school hallways, the sideways glances at family barbecues, and the endless nights staring at his ceiling, replaying the day his father walked out, leaving behind a ghost of a man who never quite filled the silence. Finn was 28 now, a graphic designer scraping by in a cramped Capitol Hill apartment, his days filled with client revisions and his nights with the low hum of indie folk playlists that promised redemption in 3-minute choruses. Seattle suited him. All brooding skies and hidden cafes, a city that wore its melancholy like a well-loved coat. It was the kind of place where you could vanish into the crowd at Pike Place Market, lose yourself in the steam of a double Americano, and pretend the world wasn't unraveling one thread at a time. His mother's birthday was in 2 weeks, her 55th, a milestone she'd been dreading since the divorce papers yellowed in a drawer. Maggie Harlan had always been the queen of Ridge Valley, that sleepy suburb an hour east of the city, where picket fences hid the kind of secrets that festered like untreated wounds. She ran the local bakery, Harlan's Hearth, with an iron fist wrapped in flour-dusted aprons, her laugh a weapon she wielded against anyone who dared question her. Finn remembered the first time she'd caught him with that dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room hidden under his mattress. Her eyes had narrowed, lips curling into that familiar sneer. "Books like that will rot your brain, Finn. Real men build things, not fantasies." He'd been 16, heart pounding like a trapped bird, and from that day on, her barbs became routine. Casual dismissals over Sunday dinners, whispers to aunts about phases that never passed. Yet here he was, plotting her surprise party like a man possessed. It started as a whim, born from a late-night call with his sister Lila, who'd moved to Portland and washed her hands of the family drama years ago. "She's turning into dad without the charm, Finn," Lila had said, her voice tinny over the line. "But you're the glue. Do something big. Make her remember why she fought so hard." So Finn dove in, headfirst into the chaos of venue scouting and playlist curating, because if he couldn't fix them, maybe he could freeze them in a moment of forced joy. He booked the back room at the Rusty Anchor, a waterfront dive bar in Fremont with exposed brick walls and fairy lights strung like hesitant apologies. Invites went out to the usual suspects, cousins from Tacoma, old high school pals who'd scattered like leaves in the wind, and even Uncle Ray, who still sent Finn Christmas cards with fishing lures attached, oblivious to the undercurrents. The planning consumed him. Mornings blurred into sketches of custom invitations, elegant scripts overlaying faded photos of Maggie in her prime, wind-whipped on the family boat, laughing with a freedom Finn had never known. Afternoons were for errands, picking up her favorite Zinfandel from the co-op on Queen, and sourcing wildflower centerpieces from the market that echoed the bouquets she'd once arranged for church socials. Evenings, he'd collapse onto his thrift store couch, laptop balanced on his knees, tweaking the menu. Crab cakes for the coastal nostalgia, lemon tarts dusted with powdered sugar like fresh snow on the Olympics. It was meticulous, almost ritualistic, each detail a brick in the wall he hoped would hold back the flood of old hurts. But the barbs kept coming, unbidden and unrelenting. One crisp October afternoon, Finn swung by the bakery to drop off a sample cake topper, a delicate porcelain figure of a woman with a crown of thorns, symbolizing resilience, or so he'd imagined. Maggie was behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, kneading dough with the ferocity of someone battling invisible demons. The bell above the door jingled like a warning, and she looked up, her steel-gray eyes appraising him in that way that made his skin crawl. "Finn, to what do I owe the pleasure? Come to borrow money again, or just here to brighten my day with your sparkle?" He forced a grin, sliding the topper across the scarred oak counter. "Thought you'd like this for the big day. Subtle, right? Like you." She picked it up, turning it in her calloused fingers, her lips twisting into something between a smile and a grimace. The shop was empty, save for the hum of the oven and the faint scent of cinnamon masking the bitterness between them. Subtle. That's one word for it. Another might be frivolous. Like that shirt you're wearing. Peacock colors for a man pushing 30. What would your father say? The mention of Harlan Sr. hit like a gut punch. He'd vanished 12 years ago, chasing skirts in Reno, leaving Finn to inherit the blame for every fracture in the family facade. Finn's jaw tightened, but he swallowed the retort, bubbling up. Dad would say it's your party, Mom, and I'm making it special. She set the figurine down with a clink, wiping her hands on her apron as if cleansing herself of his touch. Special? Huh. You and your specials, special friends, special dreams. While the rest of us grind away in the real world. Lila called, said you're wasting time on some graphic nonsense instead of settling down with a nice girl. When are you going to grow up, Finn? The words landed like hailstones, each one stinging deeper than the last. He stood there, rain from his jacket pooling on the floor, feeling 12 again, caught with his hand in the wrong drawer. That night, alone in his apartment, Finn poured a glass of bourbon, cheap stuff from the corner store, and scrolled through old photos on his phone. There was one of him and Maggie at Golden Gardens, her arms around his shoulders, both of them squinting into the sun, oblivious to the storm clouds gathering. He traced the screen with his thumb, wondering when the warmth had curdled into this cold distance. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of toasts that turned to ash in his mouth. But morning brought resolve, stubborn as Seattle fog. He texted his best friend, Cole, a barista with tattoos snaking up his arms like vines claiming a neglected trellis. Need backup for party recon. Beers after. Cole met him at a hole-in-the-wall on Broadway, the kind of place where the jukebox played Springsteen unironically and the walls were papered with faded band flyers. Over IPAs that foamed like unresolved arguments, Finn spilled the plan, the venue, the cake, the playlist heavy on Patsy Cline and Fleetwood Mac for that ironic twist. Cole listened, his dark eyes steady, the only one who'd stuck around after Finn's coming out imploded their senior year friend group. You're a saint, man, Cole said, clinking glasses. Or a masochist. Maggie's got claws, and you're handing her the yarn. Finn shrugged, the motion pulling at the ache in his chest. Family's not about fair. It's about showing up. As the weeks ticked down, the preparations accelerated. Finn enlisted Lila's remote help for the guest list, her emails a mix of encouragement and eye-roll emojis. He sourced a photographer, an old college buddy named Miles who specialized in candid shots that captured the soul's quiet corners. Even the weather seemed to conspire, the relentless drizzle easing into tentative blue skies, as if the city itself held its breath. But beneath the bustle, a restlessness stirred in Finn, a longing for connection that the party couldn't touch. It had been months since his last hookup, a fleeting thing with a musician who'd ghosted after one too many vulnerable confessions. Lately, his fantasies drifted not to strangers, but to the what-ifs, a partner who saw the cracks and stayed anyway, who understood the weight of loving through the barbs. It was on a Thursday, threading through the throng at the Fremont Sunday Market. Wait, markets were weekends, but he'd adjusted for a pop-up vendor. That fate, or coincidence dressed as such, intervened. Finn was haggling over a set of vintage lanterns, their glass etched with stories of long-gone sailors, when he bumped shoulders with a stranger. Sorry, the man said, his voice low and warm like aged whiskey, steadying Finn with a hand that lingered just a beat too long. Up close, he was striking. Late 20s, olive skin glowing under the overcast light, black hair cropped close, and eyes the color of Puget Sound after a storm, deep green, flecked with gold. He wore a leather jacket over a thermal, jeans faded at the knees, the kind of effortless style that screamed Portland transplant. No harm, Finn replied, heat creeping up his neck as their gazes locked. The man smiled, slow and genuine, revealing a dimple that softened the sharp line of his jaw. Those lanterns? They'd light up a room like nobody's business. Planning something. Finn hesitated, then launched into it. The party, the mother, the minefield of motivations. Words tumbled out, unfiltered, as if the market's chaos had loosened something inside him. The stranger, Wyatt Ellis, graphic novelist from Ballard, listened without interruption, his nods thoughtful, his laughter a balm against the raw edges. By the time they exchanged numbers, the sun had peeked through, casting long shadows that danced like possibilities. Wyatt texted that night. If you need a +1 for moral support, I'm in. Sounds like epic chaos. Finn stared at the screen, heart thudding, the bourbon from earlier warming his veins. For the first time in months, the apartment felt less like a cage and more like a launch pad. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, simple as that. But inside, a spark ignited, fragile, flickering, but alive. As he lay in bed, rain pattering against the window like hesitant applause, Finn allowed himself to imagine it. Wyatt at his side, their hands brushing under the table, a quiet anchor in the storm of the party. Little did he know, the real tempest was brewing not in the weather, but in the revelations yet to unfold. The days blurred into a frenzy of last-minute touches. Finn and Wyatt met twice more. Once for coffee at a hole-in-the-wall on Finney Ridge, where steam curled from mugs like secrets escaping lips, and again to hang the lanterns at the rusty anchor, their laughter echoing off the rafters as they wrestled with extension cords. Wyatt had a way of seeing Finn, really seeing him. Not the gay son, label Maggie slapped on like a scarlet letter, but the man who sketched dreams in the margins of spreadsheets, who hummed show tunes while folding laundry. "You're building more than a party," Wyatt said one evening, as they stepped out into the chill, shoulders brushing. "You're building a bridge." Finn wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at the edges, sharp as the wind off the sound. Maggie's jabs sharpened with proximity. A week out, Finn stopped by the bakery again, this time with fabric swatches for table runners, soft blues and grays, evoking the harbor at dawn. She was icing cupcakes, her movements precise, almost violent, the spatula scraping like nails on chalkboard. "What's all this?" she demanded, eyeing the samples as if they were contraband. He explained, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. Her response was a scoff, loud enough to turn heads from the couple in the corner booth. "Table runners. For my party." "Finn, honey, save the flair for your little gatherings. This is for family, not some parade." The word parade landed like a slap, evoking pride floats and the 1 year he'd marched alone, rainbow flag clutched like a shield, her absence a hole wider than the boulevard. He left without another word, the swatches crumpled in his fist, rain soaking through his hoodie as he trudged to his car. The drive home was a blur of windshield wipers and radio static, some oldie crooning about lost love that hit too close. Wyatt called then, his voice a lifeline. "Rough day." Finn unloaded, the words spilling like overflow from a dam cracking under pressure. Wyatt listened, then said softly, "She's scared, Finn, of losing you to the truth of who you are. But you're not running, you're inviting her in." It was the kindest dissection of the wound Finn had ever heard, and that night, over takeout pad thai on Finn's couch, their knees touching, Wyatt leaned in. The kiss was tentative at first, tasting of soy and possibility, then deepening into something that unraveled Finn's defenses. Hands roamed, shirts shed, the room filling with gasps and the rustle of sheets that promised, if only for hours, escape from the gathering storm. Lila arrived 2 days before the party, her suitcase thumping down the stairs like an exclamation point to the tension. She was 32 now, sharp-featured like their mother but with Finn's hazel eyes, softened by the distance Portland provided. They hugged fiercely in the airport arrivals, her perfume, jasmine, and resolve, wrapping around him like armor. "God, Finn, you look like hell. Planning perfection will do that." Over greasy diner eggs the next morning, she grilled him on details. The DJ, a cousin with a vinyl obsession. The cake, for tears of vanilla sponge, veiled in buttercream waves. The toast, Finn's secret weapon, scribbled in a notebook stained with coffee rings. "And this Wyatt guy?" she teased, waggling eyebrows. "Don't think I missed the glow." "Spill." Finn did, haltingly at first, then with the rush of confession. Wyatt wasn't just a date. He was a mirror, reflecting back the parts of Finn Maggie had tried to erase, the tenderness in his touch, the stories he wove from fragments of hurt. They'd spent the previous night walking the locks at Ballard, watching salmon leap against the current. Wyatt's arm slung casual over Finn's shoulders. "Feels real," Finn admitted to Lila, cheeks flushing. She squeezed his hand. "Then hold on. Mom's got her walls up, but you're handing her a ladder. Whether she climbs is on her." The final preparations were a whirlwind. Finn and Wyatt transformed the rusty anchor, tables draped in those blues, lanterns casting golden pools that danced like fireflies on steroids. Guests trickled in early. Uncle Ray with his booming laugh, cousins clutching bottles of rose, old neighbors who eyed Finn with that mix of pity and pride. Maggie arrived fashionably late, swept in on a wave of perfume and pretense, her red dress a slash of defiance against the muted tones. "Finn," she said, air-kissing his cheek, "you've outdone yourself." Almost like a real event. They almost stung, but he smiled, steering her to her seat of honor, Wyatt at his side, a silent bulwark. As plates circulated, Oysters on the half-shell, sliders with aioli that whispered of summer barbecues. The room hummed with chatter, punctuated by bursts of laughter that felt fragile, like glass underfoot. Maggie held court, her stories laced with barbs. The time Finn tripped into the lake at family camp, code for his first awkward fumble with a boy, the phase of his art school days. Guests chuckled politely, but Finn felt each one like a pinprick, drawing blood from wounds half-healed. Wyatt's hand found his under the table, thumb tracing circles of reassurance, but even that couldn't staunch the slow bleed. Halfway through dessert, as the cake was wheeled out to applause, Maggie rose, glass in hand, commandeering the mic with the ease of someone who'd never known defeat. "To my son," she began, voice honeyed venom, "who's always been unique. Planned this whole shebang while chasing his rainbows. Here's to family. May we all land on solid ground someday." The room tittered, forks pausing midair, and Finn's vision blurred, not from tears but rage, hot and unfamiliar. Wyatt tensed beside him, but Finn shook his head. Wait. This was his bridge, teetering but intact. He stood, heart slamming like bass in a crowded club, and took the mic. The words he'd rehearsed dissolved, replaced by truth raw as an open vein. "Mom," he said, voice steady despite the quake in his knees. "This party isn't about solid ground. It's about the water we swim in, the messy, churning kind that pulls us under but teaches us to float." He paused, scanning faces. Lila's nod, Uncle Ray's furrowed brow, Wyatt's unwavering gaze. "You raised me to build, to endure, but you also taught me to hide. From myself. Dad left because he couldn't face the depths, but I stayed. Because love isn't land, it's the dive." Gasps rippled, but he pressed on, voice cracking like thunder. "Tonight, I want you to know, I'm not your regret. I'm your son. And this," he gestured to the room, the lights, the faces, "this is us, floating together." Maggie sat frozen, color draining from her cheeks, her glass hovering midway to her lips. The room held its breath, the air thick with the weight of unspoken histories, the letters Finn had found in the attic, Dad's confessions of his own hidden loves, the affairs that mirrored Finn's truths in ways she'd never admitted. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw not scorn, but a mirror of his own ache, the fear of drowning in authenticity. She lowered the glass, lips parting, but no sound came. Silence stretched, eternal as the tide, wrapping the room in its hush. In that quiet, something shifted. Maggie reached out, hand trembling, and Finn took it, their fingers intertwining like roots seeking soil. The toast hung unfinished, but its echo lingered, a promise of waters navigated, not conquered. Guests murmured, then clapped, the sound swelling like waves receding. Wyatt pulled him close later, under the lantern's glow, whispering, "You did it. You dove." Finn nodded, tears finally falling, tasting of salt and sea. As the night wound down, Maggie lingered, her voice a whisper against the clean-up clatter. I didn't know how deep it went. No apology, but an opening, a crack in the facade where light could seep. Weeks later, the party a memory etched in faded photos Miles had sent. Finn and Wyatt walked those same locks, hands linked openly now. Maggie called more, halting talks over coffee at the bakery, her barbs blunted, replaced by questions that probed gently. "Tell me about him," she'd say of Wyatt, and Finn would, words flowing freer each time. Lila visited again, the three of them hiking Discovery Park, laughter mingling with the gulls' cries. It wasn't perfection, no Hollywood fade to credits, but humanity in the interim, the choice to swim, side by side, through currents that once threatened to pull them apart. Finn learned that silence could be profound, not empty, a space for growth, for the truths that bloom in the pause. Maggie's forever hush wasn't defeat, but dawning, the realization that her son's rainbows weren't illusions, but prisms refracting the light she'd dimmed in herself. In Seattle's endless drizzle, they built anew, not bridges over chasms, but rafts on the shared sea. And in that, they found not just survival, but the grace to sail.